Paralyzing enemies, making them a little chilly, and standing your ground with nothing but a longsword. A spellsword or a battlemage build is very fun in Oblivion, with versatility in the spells and the weapon usage that really keeps the build feeling fresh as you progress through the game. Let's go! Let me know in the comments any other builds you'd like to see. This Spellsword build is basically what I've been running through most of my Oblivion Remastered playthrough, because it's kind of what I ran back in original Oblivion as well, because I like to use spells because they're just so powerful, especially when you consider spell crafting. And I also like to swing cool weapons around, so you just kind of get the best of both worlds. You've got a solid amount of damage potential both with your sword, if you choose to use a sword, and versatility in the crowd control options with your spells. Now, there's a couple of spells that I'm mainly using, and we'll just cover this stuff here, and then we'll get into how to build a spell sword, the best gear to get, and a couple of tips towards the end. But starting with spells, I'm really using like two main sort of damage dealing, at least one of them is technically damage, one of them isn't, spells, and then a few like buffs and sort of auxiliary spells surrounding that. First, I call Frozen, and it's essentially a cold damage spell that has 1 second of paralyze. Now, the reason that I like this is because with a spell sword, battle mage sort of build thing, you don't really have a lot of defensive capabilities, right? We can get a little bit of that by casting defend or any of those protect alteration spells, which we are doing as part of our buffs, but it's a little bit different to say like a big bruiser that has like maximum endurance or something like that. And in a lot of encounters where there are multiple enemies, it's very beneficial just to even paralyze an enemy for 1 second, because a 1 second paralyze on a custom spell is actually more than you think, because the enemy will hit the ground and then there's the animation of them getting up. So it's more like 2 to 3 seconds, and you can just wail on them while they're on the ground. So what I've done for this Frozen spell is I've combined 1 second of paralyze with a little bit of cold damage, because there is a lot of enemies in Oblivion that are weak to frost damage, and then you can amplify that even more by just say having spells that add weakness to frost, something like that. Now, I have a video that explains exactly how custom spells and like spellcrafting works, so go and watch that video if you want all of that detailed. So I'm not going to cover that here, but what I will cover is the paralyze effect. In order to get this, you will actually need to have like a paralyze spell that you can use. The easiest way to grab this is to go to the Serpent Stone, which is right near the Leowin area of the map, right down in that bottom south area. If you click on this stone, it will give you the Cobra's Dance Illusion spell, and it can only be used once per day, but that doesn't matter to us. What the real kicker here is that it actually unlocks that paralyze effect, so that you can go back to your spell crafting table and actually make a paralyze spell. Paralyze is only touch, so that's why our Frozen spell is only touch here. I'm using my custom Soul Drain spell, which I talked about how to make in that spell crafting video as well. The reason I like this is because it does drain souls to add them to your soul gems, which you can then just dump into any of your enchanted weapons, like we are with the enchanted Daedric longsword that I'm using here, or just any of the enchanted weapons you may be using. It helps just to have a easy spell that you can get these effects on. And then I'm using a couple of buff spells like Magicka Up, which increases my Magicka as well as my willpower for Magicka regen, and then the protect spell we touched on earlier. All right, so how to build a spell sword. Now, race wise, there's really two main options. I will say though, like generally speaking, if you want to go for specific role play for your races, your Birthsign, your classes, whatever, like it's totally fine. Oblivion's not like a super hard game unless you want to, I don't know, punish yourself by playing on Master. So you can choose whatever race, Birthsign, everything you want, but this is like if you want to min-max, sort of, this is what you're looking for. So race wise, you've got really two options, being the Breton and the High Elves. The Breton, because you start with a plus 50 to your Magicka, and you get extra intelligence and willpower for your total Magicka and your Magicka regeneration, and a tiny little bit of strength. Definitely better if you want to lean into more of that melee aspect of this kit rather than say the magical spells. If you want the magical spell sort of variant, then the High Elves are the better option, because you get that extra 100 Magicka starting bonus and extra intelligence as well. So if you want to lean a bit more into the spells, that's what you want to go. Though I would make sure that you go the Orindon Origin, because then you start with 30 speed rather than 30 endurance, because endurance is like your health, so you want to have that just a little bit extra health. But for your Birthsign, again, there's a couple of options here. You could go the Lady if you want to lean magic, because of the willpower and the endurance. Willpower for your Magicka regen, and endurance just for the overall extra health. And if you want to lean into more of the melee side of things, you can then go the Warrior, which is basically the same. You get that endurance, but you also get strength. Now, strength will increase the damage for most of your weapons, except for short swords, bows, and daggers. daggers. The rest are then tied to your strength. You've got other options, like the thief is always a good option because of the additional luck, and agility and speed can't go wrong with that. Something like the Atronach or the apprentice aren't really as good because they come with negatives, but then if you just want, say, extra magicka, the mage is also just a solid option anyway. You can't really go wrong with any of these, like none of them are bad, just be careful if you do pick one that has a negative effect. Class wise, there is a couple of options here. Now there is a battle mage and a spell sword class that you can start with. The issue with both of these is that they aren't very well set up for their major skills, especially the battle mage that has both blunt and blade weapons. Like you don't really need both of those. The spell sword is definitely better set up, so if you just want to go class, just go the spell sword, definitely easier, but making a custom class can then get a little bit more of that min-maxing aspect. Now for your specialization, I would recommend to go magic, and then for your attributes, I would go intelligence and willpower, or depending on, say, if you went the high elf, you might want to go strength just so you get that little bit of extra strength because you've already got quite a high intelligence and willpower just to balance that out a little bit. And then for your overall major skills, there is a little bit of flexibility here in what you want to choose depending on exactly how you want to set up your kit. I like going attribute so you can get dodge straight away, alteration, blade, destruction, heavy armor unless you want to wear light armor. We will talk about some good light armor options in a second, and then illusion and restoration. Now the reason you want to put most of the magical skills in your major skills is because you'll get more starting spells which can massively help you level these skills as well as fit that sort of role play of a spell sword much earlier, right? So by the ones that we've started with, you get the restoration spells, you get absorb health, which is quite solid, protect. There's plenty of options here that you'll then get access to right at the start of the game without having to go and buy a lot of those spells, which will just cost you gold and essentially just a gold sink. So it does help in the early stages of the game. When leveling up, you definitely want to lean into your intelligence and your willpower, and then secondarily strength and endurance. Endurance for your health, and then strength for the damage with your melee weapon, as well as you do get a little bit of health by investing in strength as well. Something to note, if you are going to use, say, a short sword, a dagger, or a bow, you might want to lean agility rather than strength, but for the most part here, I am using long swords, so that's the route that I have gone. But say if you want to use something like Chill Rend, which is a short sword, then you probably want to lean agility rather than strength. All right, some gear to get and just the overall like equipment setup. For gear, you can kind of just wear like whatever is available to you at any point in the game, especially based on some of that random enchanted gear that you do find. Like you will find a lot of solid enchanted gear just, through the dungeons and stuff in the game that, I can't really tell you exactly where to get them because they're random, but leaning into things that increase your willpower, your endurance, your blade, your magicka, fortifying those aspects of your kit is definitely beneficial. And then weapon wise, like anything that adds weakness to any of the magical damages like frost, etc. are all fantastic. Even using Chill Rend, even though it is a short sword at the start of the game, is fantastic for frost damage as well as weakness to frost if you want to lean into that frost. Which, by the way, to get Chill Rend, you will need to go to the Coral Town, which you'll go to as part of the main story anyway for Wayne and Priory, and go into the inn right inside the gates and talk to Valus Odell. Complete the quest that he gives you, just make sure that both of his sons survive, and at the end of that quest he'll give you Chill Rend. A couple of other good gear options for uniques. The Birthright of Astalon is a fantastic chest piece. It is a light chest piece, but it does fortify your magicka by 50 points and fortify agility by 5. Now this comes from the Gilded Carif at the Imperial City Market District. You do need 50 mercantile skill in order to unlock this, so make sure you've got that, or just use, say, a custom spell, which I did talk about how to do in that spellcrafting video as well, to level up that mercantile just for a period of time so you can then unlock that. Something to note is that armor will lower your spell effectiveness depending on how high your armor stat is. Say for example, if you're like only a novice in light armor or heavy armor, it'll actually lower the spell effectiveness. You can see this on the magic screen. The more proficient you are in that armor you're wearing, the lower those negative effects are. So that's why it is also beneficial to put at least one of them in your major skills just to minimize that effect over a period of time. Also, if you like what we do here, consider hitting that like button or subscribing, or the membership program. For just $1 you can get early access to videos like this and all of my other guides, build videos, and those cheeky long form essays we do. Plus there are other benefits like members only channels in the Discord, merch, and more. So if you like what we do here, please consider hitting that join button or subscribing, as it helps me more than you know. But enough of that, back to the video. Weapon wise, I would recommend to have a staff and a longsword, so you've got both a ranged and a melee option. Staff, like one of the best staffs in the game, game just to grab early is the staff at Render's Staffs in the Market District. Apotheos is fantastic because it gives you fire, frost, and shock damage. And the reason this is beneficial, it's also why I use a spell called Elemental Surge occasionally in this kit as well, is because it does fire, frost, and shock. Very, very rarely will you come across an enemy that is immune to like all types of magical damage, right? So say you might be fighting a shock Atrionaut, obviously they're going to be resistant to shock, but you're still doing a ton of fire and frost damage, for example. And then say like a unique set of armor and like weapon you could grab is Brusev's Amélion's armor sword as well. Now in the Amélion Tomb is where you'll find all of the armor plus a longsword here that does add ice damage or frost damage. Now if you had say a spell, a custom spell that added weakness to frost or something like that, then you get extra benefits for using a weapon like this. But I do just generally recommend to enchant your own gear. I am working on a guide on how exactly all of that works. That'll be out in the next couple of days, but you get the general idea of what we've discussed with gear here. A couple of quick tips just to close us off. Focus on leveling your magic spells as quickly as possible. Destruction, alteration, restoration, like those are the main three really here for that defensive benefits to alteration, restoration, and then obviously your damage from destruction. But conjuration and mysticism and illusion aren't too bad to level either, but running around spamming these spells often is definitely beneficial to level them up as quickly as possible. Now you can use magic to weaken enemies from a distance as well. So say for example, I've got a spell called Snow Cone, which has weakness to frost on it, does a little bit of frost damage as well, and then I could use that say from distance, and then when they get to me I can keep swinging with my sword. I did mention it briefly earlier, but leveling up your acrobats to get dodge is definitely beneficial. Because we aren't using a shield here, you can still block with a longsword, like that's totally fine, but the dodge mechanic is a little bit more advanced in the remaster as well, so you can dodge in all different directions, so it can absolutely help you with avoiding and kiting enemies in combat, which you'll definitely be doing a lot of. And then joining the Mages Guild as soon as possible to get access to spells, as well as leveling those spells and just generally complete the role play of this like spell sword setup. I would recommend to join the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild. And then if you're looking for the best house for something like this general build, you should check out my video on where you can find all the houses and how to unlock them. I will link that here for you. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.